My name's Calvin. I'm 35, a software consultant, and the kind of guy who reads the fine print on family group texts but rarely replies. I'm the youngest of three, and by far, the quietest. Not because I don't have opinions, but because I learned early on that in our family, silence is safer. My sister, Vanessa, 2 years older, fills up the room with opinions, emotions, and chaos, usually all at once. And my parents? Well, let's just say they gave up trying to keep her in check a long time ago. It was easier for them to ignore the storm than stand in it. Vanessa has always been a lot. Loud, impulsive, self-centered in a way that almost seemed like a performance. Growing up, she'd throw fits if her birthday cake wasn't the exact shade of purple she wanted, if the spotlight shifted to anyone else for even a second. And it worked. Our parents tiptoed around her like she was a ticking bomb. Meanwhile, I got good at disappearing. I got my first job at 15, saved my allowance, kept my grades up, and stayed out of trouble. That was the role carved out for me. The responsible one, the low-maintenance child. But here's the thing about being low maintenance. People start thinking they can take advantage of that. Like you're a piece of furniture. Reliable, quiet, never needing much attention or care. Vanessa got pregnant at 19 and married at 20. The guy bailed before the baby turned 2. That's how Leo, my nephew, came into the picture. I've always tried to be a good uncle. I'd bring him Lego sets on his birthday, take him to the zoo, help out when Vanessa needed an extra hand. She loved to say, "Leo looks up to you." And I believed it, until recently. Vanessa's always been bad with money. I mean comically bad. Credit cards maxed out. Overdraft fees she blamed on predatory banking. And a deep, unwavering faith that the universe owed her nice things. She'd cry about being overwhelmed, with single motherhood one minute, and then post Instagram stories of champagne brunches and salon visits the next. Still, she was family, and for a long time, I figured she'd eventually grow out of the chaos. Spoiler, she didn't. A few years ago, I landed a big contract and finally started making real money. I don't mean by a lumbo money, but definitely don't think twice about ordering appetizers money. I kept it mostly quiet, though. Just upgraded my apartment, traveled a little, paid off some debts. I never bragged. Vanessa found out anyway. That's when the subtle shift started. She began joking that I was the rich one now. Jokes like, "Oh, let Calvin pay, he's swimming in it." Or, "You better not forget your favorite nephew when you hit billionaire status." Always said with a laugh, always in public, but always with a little too much weight behind the words. Still, it wasn't until Leo turned 16 that things took a turn I didn't see coming. I'd given Leo one of my old iPhones a year earlier, a spare, unlocked, perfectly good phone I'd wiped clean before handing it over. I even offered to pay for a few months of his phone plan, just to help them out. Harmless, right? Apparently not. Unbeknownst to me, Leo still had access to my Apple Pay. My card was still linked somehow, probably from a time I helped him download an app or ordered them dinner while babysitting. I should have double-checked. That part's on me. What's not on me is what they did with it. It started small. A few odd charges I didn't immediately notice. $9.99 here, $12.49 there. I assumed they were subscriptions I'd forgotten to cancel. We've all been there. But then came the first red flag, a $640 charge at a store I didn't recognize. I blinked at the statement, confused. Did I buy something for my home office? A new monitor? A printer? But I hadn't ordered anything in weeks. Then came the drone. Literally. An $899 charge at a tech store. I called the bank. They walked me through the recent purchases. Designer clothes, gadgets, accessories. The kind of stuff I don't buy for myself, let alone anyone else. The total? $31,700. $31,700. Gone. My heart thudded against my ribs. I checked the delivery addresses on the charges. Sure enough, most of them were shipped to Vanessa's place. That's when it hit me, Leo. I didn't want to believe it at first. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe someone hacked his phone. Maybe someone else used his Apple ID. But before I could spiral too far down the denial hole, I saw a post on Leo's Instagram. A selfie, full mirror, dripped out in Gucci and Nike. The caption? "Don't worry, Uncle's card pays for everything." I stared at my screen for a solid minute. My throat went dry. It was a joke, right? Please be a joke. I refreshed the post. It was still there. Hundreds of likes. Comments filled with laughing emojis and "W bro" from his friends. I felt like someone had poured ice water down my spine. I took screenshots. My hands were actually shaking. I called Vanessa. She didn't answer. I texted, "Hey, I need to talk to you. Urgent." Nothing. An hour later, she finally called back. Her voice was casual, chipper even. "What's up, Cal?" "Vanessa," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I need to ask you something. Did Leo use my card to buy all this stuff? Over 30 grand is missing from my account." There was a pause, just long enough to confirm everything. Then she sighed. "Oh, come on. It's not that deep, Cal. He's just a kid. Not that deep." I sat there in stunned silence. "You think $30,000 is not that deep?" I said slowly. "I mean, he didn't know any better. And honestly, you make good money. I figured you wouldn't even notice. He just got excited, you know? He's 16. He wants to impress his friends. Don't be such a hard A asterisk asterisk about it." I'm not being. I stopped myself. "Vanessa, he stole from me. It's family, Calvin," she said, her voice sharper now. "Don't act like you haven't helped before. Not like this. You always play the victim," she snapped. "Honestly, maybe if you visited more or got involved in his life, he wouldn't have felt the need to show off." That one actually made me laugh, bitter and low. I gave him a phone. "I gave you both so much help. I'm not your ATM. You're overreacting." I took a breath and said the only thing I could think of: kids learn from consequences. Then I hung up. I sat there in my kitchen, the walls closing in around me. The betrayal wasn't just the money. It was the assumption, the casual entitlement, the way she didn't even flinch. Like I was some distant cousin with a black card, not her brother who had scraped his way up from a shoebox apartment and microwave dinners. That night, I stared at my ceiling until 2 a.m., thinking, replaying every time I'd paid for dinner, every favor I'd done, every time I'd swallowed a snide comment to keep the peace. Every time I told myself, she's family, just let it go. Then I opened my laptop. I logged into my bank account, and I froze every card. Every linked account. I reported the card as stolen and disputed every charge. At 6:42 a.m., my phone buzzed. One text. All caps. "What did you do?" I locked the screen and stared at the ceiling again, heart pounding, not with fear this time, but something else. Clarity. And maybe, for the first time in years, a little bit of peace. I didn't reply to her text. Not at first. I just stared at it, still groggy from barely sleeping, while the sun spilled weak morning light across my kitchen. My coffee sat untouched. My phone buzzed again, then again, and again. 23 missed calls before 8 a.m., mostly from Vanessa. A few from my mom. Even Leo tried once, though I imagine that call wasn't voluntary. I let them all go to voicemail. I needed space. I needed time to think. But mostly, I wanted them to sit with the confusion for a bit. The not knowing. Because for years, I'd been the one left wondering, trying to make sense of things that never did. Why I was always the one who had to understand. Why being responsible came with the silent tax of being taken for granted. Why helping meant you were expected to help forever. By noon, Vanessa showed up at my building. I only knew because the doorman called me. "Hey, Mr. Reed, there's a very upset woman in the lobby who says she's your sister. Says it's urgent." I sighed. "Tell her I'm not home." "She's refusing to leave." I pinched the bridge of my nose. "Tell her I'm out of town. I'll call her when I'm back." He hesitated. "You sure?" "I'm sure." It was a lie. I was in my pajamas. But I just didn't have the energy for whatever meltdown she was about to unleash. I could already picture it. The dramatic tears, the manipulative guilt tripping, the switch flipped from sweet to venomous when she realized I wasn't budging. I watched through the peephole as she eventually stomped away. Her phone to her ear, jaw clenched. It was only a matter of time before Mom called again. And sure enough, 2 hours later, she did. "Calvin, what is going on?" she asked, voice already tinged with judgment. I didn't answer right away. "Well," she pressed, "you want the short version or the part where your grandson stole $31,000 from me and your daughter told me to get over it?" Silence. "I don't think that's the whole story," she said finally. I almost laughed. "Oh, really? You think I fabricated the bank statements?" "I think maybe it's not as serious as it looks. Leo's just a teenager. You've always been a bit strict." That word again. Strict. I wasn't strict. I just had boundaries. Boundaries no one in this family seemed to respect. "He used my card without permission," I said, then bragged about it online. "I saw the post," she admitted. sighing like she was the one under stress. But I don't think he meant to hurt you. He probably didn't realize how much he spent. I swallowed hard. Mom, he bought a drone. And designer shoes. This isn't oops. I bought a game on accident. This was planned. Another sigh. You make good money, Calvin. Can't you just let it go? That line. That infuriating line. I'd heard it so many times over the years, it had become background noise. Can't you just let it go? Whether it was Vanessa screaming at me over a borrowed charger or her borrowing my car without asking when we were younger, it always ended the same way. Me being told to be the bigger person. Her getting off the hook. Let me ask you something, I said quietly. If I'd stolen $30,000 from Vanessa, what would you be saying right now? She didn't answer. That's what I thought. I hung up. That week, I didn't hear from Vanessa again. Not directly, but the subtweets started. Passive-aggressive posts on Facebook. Screenshots sent to me by an old high school friend who still followed her. It's crazy how money changes people. Some family members would rather ruin a kid's future than forgive a mistake. Guess that's what happens when you forget what love is. Some people think they're saints just because they have money. You're not better than the rest of us. You're just bitter. And my personal favorite. I hope you enjoy your perfect little life, Calvin. Don't come crying to me when karma circles back. Karma? For freezing my card after being robbed? It would have been laughable if it didn't sting so much. Because it wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about how fast they turned on me. How easily my silence and generosity had been twisted into coldness. How they'd rewritten the narrative so that I was the villain and Leo was some poor misunderstood child. The only person who didn't say anything was my dad. That made sense. He'd never liked conflict. He was the kind of man who disappeared into a sports game when the family argued and magically reappeared once the shouting stopped. He didn't call, didn't text, just vanished into his usual fog of avoidance. But someone else did call. My Aunt Laura. She was my mom's sister, the black sheep, who lived out in Oregon and only visited every few years. But she and I had always gotten along. She was sharp, quiet like me, saw through things most people ignored. She called me late one night. I heard about what happened, she said. I was surprised. How? Vanessa posted a rant on Instagram Live. Tagged half the family. Called you a sociopath. I groaned. She's always been like this, Laura said. Even as a kid. You know she tried to blame me for breaking a window when she was 10. I believe it. There was a pause. She doesn't get to play the victim forever, she said softly. You did the right thing. I wanted to thank her. I really did. But something about her tone gave me pause. That's not all, is it? She hesitated. I probably shouldn't say anything. But just keep an eye on your credit. That made my stomach drop. What do you mean? I mean, Vanessa's been asking questions. About credit limits. How to open new cards. I overheard her talking to your mom about it a few weeks ago. She said something like, if Calvin can live without a few $1,000s, he won't miss a little more. I sat there in stunned silence. She wouldn't, I started. But I didn't finish the sentence. Because deep down, I already knew. Vanessa had all my info. My full name, address, birthday. We'd grown up in the same house. She could probably guess the answers to my security questions without trying. I ended the call and immediately opened a credit report site. 3 new inquiries. 1 approved account. A credit card I didn't recognize, opened under my name. $5,000 balance. Maxed. I froze. My heart raced as I clicked through the details. It had been open for just over 3 weeks. Enough time to rack up charges, make the minimum payment, and stay off my radar. I felt cold all over. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't Leo screwing around with a phone. This was identity theft. Planned. Calculated. By my own sister. I filed a report. Froze my credit. Called the company and started the process of disputing the charges. My voice shook, but my mind was crystal clear. The next morning, I called my lawyer. Not because I wanted to sue, but because I needed to know what I could do to protect myself from my own family. 2 hours later, as I sat reviewing paperwork with him, my phone buzzed again. Vanessa. This time I picked up. You need to stop, she snapped. You're ruining everything. I didn't say anything. You froze your credit? Really? Do you know how much trouble that causes for everyone? Leo needs a new laptop for school, and now my cosign is getting flagged. I hope you're happy. You opened a card in my name, I said quietly. Another pause. That's not what happened. I have the statement. Look, Calvin, she said, her voice suddenly softening. This is all getting out of hand. We're family. Don't let money turn us into strangers. You used to be so kind. What happened to you? That line hit me in a way I didn't expect. Because for a second, I almost believed it. What had happened to me? Then I realized, nothing. I hadn't changed. I just finally stopped letting them treat me like a doormat. And that made them uncomfortable. I'm done, I said. You don't get to play innocent anymore. You're going to regret this, she hissed. You think you're above us just because you've got money and a condo with a doorman? You'll be alone, Calvin. Just wait. I hung up, and for the first time since this whole nightmare started, I felt something close to calm. But deep down, I knew this wasn't over. Because people like Vanessa don't stop. Not until they're forced to. And I was just getting started. For a few days after that call, I felt hollow. Not angry. Not vengeful. Just emptied out. It's a strange thing, realizing your own sister would rather sabotage you than admit she was wrong. That the person you used to protect, stood up for, babysat, defended to your parents, would casually commit identity theft like it was nothing more than a white lie. That your own mother would defend her. That no one except your distant aunt thought you were the victim here. I stayed off social media. Ignored every text that came through. Even the few tentative ones from extended family members. Just checking in. Or, maybe you two should talk. I didn't want to talk. I didn't want to explain why I wasn't over it. I wasn't looking for reconciliation. I was trying to survive the emotional collapse of everything I thought I understood about my own family. I went to work like nothing was wrong. Consulted on meetings. Fixed bugs. Hit deadlines. But inside, I was running on fumes. It was hard to focus when your credit's compromised, your bank account's battered, and your name's being dragged through digital mud by your own flesh and blood. One night, about 2 weeks after everything blew up, I found myself standing in the middle of my living room at 2 a.m., staring out at the city lights. I hadn't eaten dinner. I hadn't spoken to anyone in 3 days. The air was still. My phone was face down on the counter. And for the first time in a long time, I felt genuinely alone. Not the good kind of alone. Not solitude. The bad kind. The no one would even notice if I disappeared for a while kind. That night, I opened a notebook I hadn't touched in years. Back when I was still dreaming of starting my own app, I'd used it to sketch ideas, map out business models, jot random inspiration. Now it was dusty, tucked away on a shelf behind tax folders and manuals for appliances I didn't own anymore. I flipped it open. Page 1. What problem are you solving? I stared at that sentence for a long time. Because in that moment, the biggest problem in my life wasn't technical. It wasn't financial. It was personal. I had no boundaries. I had no spine when it came to family. And I'd let that fester for years because I thought love meant tolerance. Because I thought family was worth protecting, no matter how much they chipped away at you. But love without respect is just manipulation with nice packaging. That was the first thing I wrote under the question. The next morning, I called my bank again, just to confirm every dispute was still in progress. Then I made appointments with 3 different financial advisors. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I wanted clarity. I needed to know where I stood, how to protect myself, how to rebuild what I'd lost, how to make sure this never happened again. One advisor, a woman named Lila, stood out from the rest. She was sharp, didn't mince words. After I laid out the situation, she leaned forward and said, "Here's what you do. You treat your finances the same way you treat your passwords. Compartmentalize, diversify, and never, never leave your back door open for someone just because you share DNA." That stuck with me. I started moving money. I set up a trust. I created an LLC for my freelance contracts. I encrypted everything. I finally stopped using that ancient Yahoo email I'd had since college, the one Vanessa definitely had access to. I rebuilt my life digitally and financially like I was hardening a network against cyber attacks. Because in a way, that's exactly what this was. Only the attack came from someone I'd once held as a baby. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't exciting. It was days of calls, paperwork, scans, passwords, and cold realizations. It was waking up to fraud alerts and learning to read terms and conditions like my life depended on it. But with each step, I felt a little more in control. And somewhere in that silence, I found something unexpected. Pride. Not ego. Not arrogance. But the kind of pride that comes from knowing you're finally doing right by yourself. That you're not patching over holes to keep the peace. You're rebuilding from the ground up. That you're allowed to say no, even to people you love. Especially to people you love. One morning, I got a call from Leo. I almost didn't answer. but something in me hesitated. Hello. Hey. His voice was quiet. Nervous. Hi, Leo. I wanted to say sorry. There was a long pause. Okay, I said. Go on. I didn't mean to mess everything up. I thought it was funny at first. Like, just a joke. Then Mom said it was fine and, I don't know. It got out of hand. I waited. I know you're mad. I'm not mad, I said. I'm disappointed. He winced audibly on the other end. That's worse. It is. Another pause. Are you going to press charges? I sighed. I'm not sure yet. He was silent. I don't want to hurt you, Leo. But you hurt me. And you need to understand that actions have consequences. Yeah. If I hadn't caught it in time, this could have ruined my credit. My job. My life. I know. We sat in silence again. Then he said, Mom said you're cutting us off. That you're never going to talk to us again. That depends on your mom. She's been really mad. I know. He cleared his throat. I miss when we used to hang out. You used to take me to the arcade. You were cool back then. That stung more than I expected. I swallowed. Leo, I still care about you. But I'm not your bank. I'm not your safety net. I'm your uncle. And I deserve respect. Okay. I'm glad you called. Yeah, me too. Then he hung up. I didn't know how to feel after that. Hopeful? Maybe. Sad? Definitely. But I also knew something had shifted. Not just in Leo. In me. Because for the first time, I wasn't twisting myself into knots trying to fix things. I wasn't rushing to smooth it over, to make everyone comfortable. I was letting the discomfort breathe, letting them feel the weight of their choices. And in that space, something else happened. I started dreaming again. I went back to that notebook every night. Started sketching out a real business idea, a financial security app for freelancers. Something simple, smart, automatic. Something that could help people like me set boundaries, prevent fraud, teach you how to say no with your dollars and your dignity. I built a prototype, tested it with friends. It was clunky, bare bones, but it worked. It felt like me. My apartment, once silent and sterile, started to come alive again. I cooked real meals. I bought a standing desk. I hung art. I even invited a couple friends over for a board game night, something I hadn't done since before the whole mess began. One of them, Darren, asked casually, "You've been different lately. Calmer. Stronger. What changed?" And I surprised myself when I said, I stopped giving people discounts on my worth just because they share my blood. He laughed. Damn. Put that on a t-shirt. But he was right. I was different. Not colder. Just clearer. Stronger. I still hadn't heard from my mom. My dad, unsurprisingly, stayed quiet. Vanessa posted less and less. Her Instagram went from fiery rants to cryptic quotes. Then eventually, silence. I didn't chase it, because I was no longer trying to fix what was broken beyond repair. I was focused on building something that wouldn't shatter so easily. My own life. My own boundaries. My own version of family. Chosen, not assigned. And just when things finally started to feel normal again, just when I'd begun to sleep through the night, laugh at dumb shows, and enjoy the peace I'd earned, I got a letter. In the mail. Handwritten return address. No name. Just a P.O. box in the suburbs. I opened it slowly, heart already sinking before I even unfolded the paper. The handwriting was familiar. Curvy. Dramatic loops. Vanessa. Inside was one sentence. You think this is over, Calvin? When I read that letter. You think this is over, Calvin? I didn't feel fear. Not this time. I felt a click. Like a lock turning. Like something that had been waiting, quietly, in the back of my mind finally stepped into the light and said, all right, you gave them grace. Now it's time to give yourself justice. I sat there at the kitchen counter, turning the envelope over in my hands. The handwriting, the smugness, the deliberate drama of using snail mail, like she wanted the message to linger, like she wanted me to feel the weight of the paper in my fingers and imagine her laughing while she sealed it. It wasn't just a taunt. It was a promise. Vanessa wasn't done. And for the first time since we were kids, neither was I. See, up until this point, I'd been playing defense. Freezing cards. Filing reports. Protecting myself from her chaos. But the thing about defense is, it keeps you safe, but it doesn't stop the storm. It just buys you time. That letter made something very clear. Vanessa didn't think I'd fight back. She thought I'd stay silent. Stay cautious. Stay meek. But I wasn't the same person who loaned her money and called it a gift just to avoid another fight. I wasn't the same little brother who cleaned up her messes while Mom whispered, "She's going through a lot. Be patient." I was a man with a folder full of fraud reports, screenshots, and timestamps. And now, I was building a case. I pulled out a fresh notebook, the same one I'd started scribbling business ideas in, and wrote a new title on the top of the page. Operation Consequence. Underneath, I made a list. Phase 1, Documentation. I went back through every bank statement from the last year. Not just the obvious ones. I dug deeper. Cross-referenced receipts. Matched delivery addresses to Vanessa's place. Pulled up archived emails from that old Yahoo account she used to access. Turns out, this went back further than I thought. Tiny charges. Streaming services I never signed up for. Uber rides in cities I hadn't visited. Amazon packages delivered to her zip code. She'd been bleeding me dry in increments, slow enough not to trigger alarms. Over $8,000 in minor charges. All hidden in the noise. I printed everything. Labeled each page. Built a color-coded spreadsheet with dates, vendors, amounts, and the accounts they came from. It took me 3 nights for mugs of black coffee and one very patient cat curled on my lap. But when I finished, it felt like I was holding something sacred. Truth. Undeniable, documented truth. Phase 2, Leverage. I called my lawyer again. His name's Malcolm. Mid-50s, silver hair, voice like gravel. He'd helped me once before when a past client tried to stiff me on a consulting contract. Back then, he said something that stuck with me. People assume silence means weakness. What they forget is, silence is also strategy. I told him everything. Walked him through the fraud, the credit theft, the manipulation. He didn't interrupt. Just nodded, occasionally jotting notes in his leather-pad folio. When I finished, he leaned back and said, "You want to press charges?" I hesitated. I want her to understand I'm not her punching bag. He smirked. "We can do better than that." He explained the options. Civil suit, restitution, even small claims court for the charges under $10,000. Most importantly, we could send a certified cease and desist, a formal declaration that any future attempts to defraud or harass me would trigger immediate legal consequences. But Malcolm also had another idea. "You've been cleaning this up yourself," he said. "That's admirable. But what if we made it clear that you're not alone anymore?" That's when we began Phase 3. Phase 3, Pressure. Malcolm drafted a letter. Not a threatening one. A polite one. That's what made it powerful. It was addressed to Vanessa, but CC'd to her employer. Her landlord. Her school district. She worked part-time as a counselor at Leo's high school. The letter stated, in formal legalese, that I had documented evidence of financial misconduct, unauthorized account usage, and potential identity theft, that I wasn't currently pursuing criminal charges, but had preserved all rights to do so. It didn't accuse. It informed. It didn't threaten. It warned. Legally, it was airtight. Emotionally, it was a scalpel. We mailed it. Certified. Signature required. And then we waited. 5 days later, Vanessa called. I didn't pick up. She left a voicemail. Her voice was trembling. Not the dramatic, crocodile tears sobbing she used to get out of parking tickets, but something colder. Scared. "Cal, I got your letter. What are you doing? You can't send stuff like that to my job." They called me in. They asked if I'd stolen from a family member. My boss looked at me like I was a criminal. "You are," I thought. She kept going. "This could ruin everything. I could lose my job. Leo could. He could be expelled if they think I'm unstable." And there it was. The guilt trip. The fear mixed with blame. Like clockwork. I saved the voicemail. Phase 4, the network. The thing about going through something like this is, it teaches you who your real friends are. I'd kept mostly to myself throughout the chaos. But after Malcolm's letter went out, I started reaching out to people. Quietly. Not to gossip. To gather intel. Darren, my board game buddy, turned out to be more connected than I realized. He'd gone to high school with Vanessa and still had mutuals in that old friend circle. I asked if he'd heard anything. He called me the next day. "She's spiraling," he said. Define spiraling. "She told someone you were trying to destroy her life with lies. But then someone else said she admitted to opening a credit card in your name. Said it was your fault for not noticing. Wow. She also said you were going to expose her to the whole family." I paused. Because that wasn't a bad idea. Phase 5, the mirror. For most of my life, I'd avoided conflict. Avoided airing dirty laundry. But Vanessa had been dragging my name through the mud since the day I froze that card, and I'd said nothing. Now, I decided to speak. I drafted a message. Simple. Honest. No theatrics. I posted it in the family group chat, the one with all the cousins, aunts, and uncles. The one that lit up every Christmas and went silent by New Year's. Hey everyone. I know there's been a lot of talk lately. I've stayed quiet out of respect, but I think it's time you heard the truth from me. Vanessa used my financial information without permission and stole over $30,000 from me. I've filed official reports and have documented evidence. I'm not looking for drama. I'm just making it clear that I'm not the villain in this story. I love this family, but I won't tolerate abuse from anyone, no matter what blood we share. If you want to talk, I'm here. But if you support what she did, please remove yourself from my life. Respectfully, Calvin. Then I logged out. I didn't check the chat for 2 days. When I finally did, there were 197 unread messages. Half were stunned silence. A few cousins sent private messages. I had no idea. That's insane. You handled that better than I ever could. One aunt messaged me a long apology for enabling Vanessa's behavior for years. And one name was missing entirely. Vanessa. She hadn't replied. She hadn't said a word. But Leo did. He sent me a voice memo. Hey, I read what you said. I believe you. I'm sorry. That was it. Simple. Unscripted. It meant more than I expected. And that's when I knew it was time for the final stage. Phase 6, the lockdown. With Malcolm's help, I filed the final fraud claims. We pushed for full reimbursement of the credit card damage. I installed identity protection services, locked my credit files with all 3 bureaus. I even upgraded my apartment's security system, just in case. Then I made one last change. I updated my will. It was something I'd always put off, thinking, I'm still young, I'll do it later. But now I was building something. My freelance business was growing. My app prototype was gaining traction. I was rebuilding a life I could be proud of. And I wasn't about to leave it vulnerable to people who'd already proven they'd take anything not bolted down. Vanessa was officially removed from any legal claim to my estate. If anything happened to me, Leo, and only Leo, would be given a small educational trust. But only after he turned 25. Only if he stayed clean. The rest? Donated to an organization that helps victims of financial abuse. I slept better that night than I had in months. But just as I was settling into this new life, new boundaries, new clarity, new spine, I got a knock at the door. Not a package, not a neighbor, not the building manager. Vanessa. No warning, no appointment, no rage. She stood there on my doorstep, wearing sunglasses, lips pressed in a thin line, holding a large envelope. She handed it to me without a word, then turned and walked away. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a formal legal notice. Vanessa was suing me. When I saw the lawsuit, I didn't even blink. Maybe a few months ago, it would have crushed me, sent me spiraling into anxiety, second-guessing everything, questioning whether I'd gone too far or misunderstood her intentions. That's the trap when you've been raised around emotional landmines. Your instinct is to disarm them quietly, even when they're clearly not your mess. But not anymore. Not after everything. I sat down with the envelope, laid it flat on the kitchen table, and read it word for word. Vanessa was suing me for emotional distress, reputational damage, and, get this, intentional interference with her employment. Her claim was that by attacking her character and sending misleading documents to her employer, I'd jeopardized her job and future. There were even statements attached, mostly from friends of hers or vague screenshots that lacked context, trying to paint me as unstable, vindictive, and controlling. It was bold. I'll give her that. But it was also reckless. Because I had receipts. Real ones. And I wasn't going to let her rewrite the story one more time. I called Malcolm the next morning. I didn't even have to explain. She actually filed it? He asked, amused. Wow. She really is committed to the performance. I want to counter. You want to escalate? I want to finish it. He paused for a second, then said, Okay, let's play chess. The legal war begins. We filed a formal response, complete with a motion to dismiss. We attached every piece of documented evidence I'd gathered, the unauthorized charges, the fraud reports, the identity theft filings, the credit card statements, and, most importantly, the screenshots of Leo's Instagram post and Vanessa's own voicemail where she admitted to some of the behavior she was now denying. But we didn't stop there. We filed a counterclaim for damages, financial fraud, emotional distress, identity theft, Loss of income due to the time and resources I'd had to dedicate to cleaning up the financial mess she created. The figure Malcolm proposed was conservative, $75,000. Enough to be serious. Enough to force her hand. But not so high it seemed vindictive. We didn't want blood. We wanted truth. I expected Vanessa to fold after that. But I underestimated just how deep her delusions went. She doubled down. Started posting cryptic stories again, Bible quotes about betrayal, pictures of Leo looking sad, captions like, "Family doesn't sue family. Monsters do." She even posted a photo of a courthouse with the caption, "See you soon, liar." But something was shifting. The likes on her posts dropped. The comments turned skeptical. Some people started asking questions. One cousin even commented, "Didn't you say a few months ago that Calvin wouldn't notice if a few thousand disappeared? Seems like he did." That post vanished quickly. The deposition. When the day came for her deposition, Malcolm and I sat across from her and her attorney in a stiff conference room downtown. Vanessa looked nothing like the confident, smug woman who once told me I was too soft to survive the real world. She looked tired, pale, nervous. She wore a blazer that didn't quite fit and kept tapping her pen against her notepad like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. Her lawyer was young, ambitious, probably convinced she was the victim. That belief didn't last long. When Malcolm dropped the first round of evidence, signed dispute reports, matching delivery addresses, screenshots of text messages where Vanessa laughed about accidentally using my card, it was like watching air deflate from a balloon. By the time he played the voicemail, her voice trembling, saying, "You can't send stuff like that to my job," she wasn't tapping her pen anymore. She was silent. Her lawyer leaned in and whispered something to her. She nodded, barely. Malcolm turned to me, calmly. "Would you like to make a statement, Calvin?" I nodded and leaned forward. I tried to handle this quietly. I didn't want it to come to this. But I was lied to, stolen from, and then blamed when I protected myself. I didn't go looking for revenge. I just wanted peace. And now that we're here, I want accountability. Nothing more. Nothing less. Vanessa didn't look up once. The offer. A week later, they reached out with a settlement proposal. Vanessa would drop the suit and issue a formal written apology, reviewed by our legal team, in exchange for me dropping the counterclaim. Malcolm raised an eyebrow when he read it. "She's scared." "She should be," I said. I didn't reply right away. I sat with it. Not because I doubted what to do, but because I wanted to be sure I wasn't acting out of spite. And then, I made a change. We sent back a revised offer. I dropped the financial counterclaim, but I wanted three things. A notarized confession, acknowledging what she did, the fraud, the card misuse, the impersonation. No vague language. No half apologies. Mandatory financial counseling, 12 sessions, documented, signed by a counselor. Paid out of her own pocket. If she missed even one, the deal was void. A public statement, sent to the family group chat and posted to her social media. It didn't need to be dramatic. Just truthful. Her lawyer balked. Malcolm didn't blink. "Your client already committed financial fraud," he said. "You want to fight this in open court? We'll be happy to bring in witnesses. Maybe Leo's teachers. Maybe her landlord. Maybe her employer. Up to you." The next day, they agreed. The fallout. The statement Vanessa posted was short, but effective. "To my family and friends. I've made serious mistakes that hurt someone I care about. I misused Calvin's financial information without permission and caused harm to both his finances and his trust in me. I take full responsibility for my actions and am working to make things right. Please don't direct blame toward him. He did what anyone would do to protect themselves." Vanessa. It was the closest she'd ever come to accountability in her entire life. The group chat blew up. Some people were shocked. Others quietly deleted their old comments defending her. A few relatives messaged me privately to apologize, saying they hadn't known the full story. But the most surprising message came from my mom. I read Vanessa's post. "I owe you an apology. I didn't believe you because I didn't want to believe she could do something like that. But I see now how much you were hurt. I'm sorry for not protecting you too." That one. That took me a while to read through. I didn't reply immediately, but I appreciated it. "And Leo?" He sent me a message 3 weeks later. "I just finished my second counseling session with Mom. She's really different. I don't know if it'll stick, but she's trying. And I think you standing up for yourself made her realize she couldn't just keep wrecking people and expecting to be forgiven. I miss you. Maybe we can hang out sometime." I smiled at that. Maybe we could, but not right away. The new chapter. 6 months later, my app went live. It wasn't flashy. It didn't get picked up by TechCrunch or go viral on TikTok. But it worked. Freelancers started signing up. People who'd been burned before by clients, partners, or family. People who understood the importance of boundaries. I called it Iron Key. Your life, your lock, your terms. One of the features? A tool to track shared accounts and alert you if anything unusual happens, especially from people you think you can trust. Vanessa's name was never mentioned in the branding, but her shadow was everywhere in the code. I moved on. I kept building, kept growing. I finally took that trip to the Pacific Northwest I'd always talked about. Spent a week in a cabin. No calls, no noise, just trees, wind, and peace. The kind you don't get from keeping people happy. The kind you earn by protecting your own peace. And when I came back, I opened that same notebook. First page. Still said, "What problem are you solving?" I wrote underneath it. The problem of pretending love is real when there's no respect to back it up. Then I closed the book, took a deep breath, and smiled. Because for once, finally, my life belonged to me.